my best social media platform. But we are back on overtime here on Sportswire Radio, and I am the host of the Sports Report, the station manager here of Sportswire Radio. And alongside me is Chris Bizet of the Brute Force, Brad Weiss, and Justin Gianelli. Justin, we did not get a chance to break it for our audience that was watching us just before, and that the Atlanta Braves have signed former Los Angeles Dodgers closer Kenley Jansen here to a 1-year, $16 million contract. I mean, certainly us Met fans are going to be, I'm sure, looking for the Pepto-Bismol here very shortly. But Justin, give me your thoughts on this development.
Well, they wanted to pack more punch in the bullpen. I mean, this adds to having Will Smith already as their closer. So, one of them obviously slides into being a setup man. And look, I mean, the Braves are the world champions, and they are serious about making another run at it. And this roster is every bit as good as it was a year ago. I mean, you're also getting Marcell Ozuna back from the domestic violence suspension. Obviously, you add Matt Olson to play first base, and he gets the 8-year, $168 million contract. No, this is just a really good Braves team. I mean, they bring Eddie Rosario back in the fold. So, I mean, Atlanta's some serious players here, and they're definitely going to be, one of the favorites, if not the favorite in the division. They're still probably the best team.
Hey, the Brute Force, you're the person that I really want to ask about this, because I remember, and I'm sure Chris will remember this, we were speaking during the season, and then when the Atlanta Braves got into the postseason, you didn't really think much of the Atlanta Braves, but the Atlanta Braves, and you got to give their general manager, Alex Anthopoulos, a lot of credit, because he really remade their team. And I know a couple of weeks ago, everybody was crowning the New York
too.
On the fly, literally. And I'm sure the Talking Rivals guys will speak a lot about this on Monday's show. But I mean, everybody was coronating the New York Mets a week or so ago. But since then, I mean, the Atlanta Braves have proved that why they're continuously a model franchise. And give me your thoughts on some of their moves, and especially these most recent ones of Matt Chapman now adequately replacing Freddie Freeman, and now Kenley Jansen adding to an already deep bullpen. I mean, certainly as Met fans,
Matt Olson.
It looks like it's going to be Matt Olson. I'm sorry, and it's going to certainly be a long Mets-Braves series when we play them. But give me your thoughts, especially Mr. Brute Force.
Yeah, well, listen, I obviously, again, not all my takes are right. You guys know that, and obviously,
not all of them. Like most of them aren't right.
Listen, the Atlanta Braves take last year in the playoffs was obviously. I actually give myself credit in a way for the Atlanta Braves success because I kind of antagonized them to an extent. So it was the fact that Tom Bryce was so complimentary of them that I antagonized them, and then and it didn't go the right way, but. In the end, listen, the Atlanta Braves are obviously a really good team. They're obviously the champs, and obviously, just like Justin said, they're the team to beat in the division. When you're the champions, when you return what you've returned, you're getting Ronald Acuna back healthy. You have Matt Olson. You bring back Eddie Rosario, which
I think that's a really nice move. The Rosario moves, I think, are really good one.
Listen, they have Ozuna, as he mentioned, back, so they have a lot of pieces back. We know they lost the Met killer Freddie Freeman, which is nice for us Mets fans. We'll only see him, with the Dodgers now and not with the Braves. But they still have a great lineup. They still have a solid rotation that's respectable, and their bullpen, as we just said, with Kenley Jansen, has gotten better. And you saw guys like Tyler Matzik, amongst others, in their bullpen really show up in the playoffs. So, again, they're a team to be reckoned with. They're a team that. Every series the Mets play the Braves, it's going to be, prime time and on ESPN and all these, different because.
But Peacock and Apple's TV streaming services and all.
Yeah. No, listen, it's going to be a big time matchup. But again, if the Mets want to really be serious about this, they spent the money like we talked about earlier. They spent the money. They got the people in place. They got the players in place. They got the manager we feel like is going to lift us. We have to go out there and we have to beat the Atlanta Braves, and we have to beat the other team that we're going to have to get to in a second because they keep making moves as well.
Yep, I definitely want to get to them, and I want to get Chris's take. And again, the Atlanta Braves, I mean, Matt Olson, it's 39 home runs last year. Local guy, too. So, I mean, he's going to have some extra motivation. But, Chris, I mean, the Atlanta Braves, to me, did a phenomenal job in retooling their team. And you got to give so much credit to their general manager. And give me your thoughts on the Atlanta Braves, because I kind of think they actually stole the New York Mets thunder here this offseason.
Yeah, a little bit right at the end. But, I mean, let's be honest. The Mets still have time to make moves. So, and
no question.
Yeah.
No question.
But right now, yeah, I mean, the Braves, like you said, they're the defending champions. And you know what? And last year, like, you know, early in the season, they kind of just, it didn't look like they were going to make the playoffs. And then they just, they made these moves that people didn't even realize they made them almost.
And they did it with Acuna. Remember, he missed the whole second half, too, don't forget.
Right. And they just made moves that you didn't really say, that like you weren't really taking them as major moves. But they turned into them, right? The Jock Peterson, Soler was big, Rosario,
was huge.
I mean, and he missed
Rosario, what a clutch player he was for them. My God, he was clutch.
And he missed most of the whole first half he missed, or
a lot of games. Yep.
I listen, and I could see them doing that this year, right? If they start off slow and a couple of guys get injured, but they're going to be good. I mean, you got Acuna coming back. This is going to be a great team, and the National League East is going to be really good. The top three, obviously, you know, Nationals made a couple of moves, but I don't think they're in the same group as the top three. But I love these moves by the Braves. Anytime you add a guy like Kenley Jansen, over 300 career saves, he could come in and close. Now you could even, you know, what if Will Smith gets hurt? Now you could move Jansen right in, you know, I mean,
you know what that reminds me of, and Chris, you'll get the reference. It almost reminds me. Remember when the Reds had Rob Dibble and Norm Charlton as the closers?
Oh yeah,
the Atlanta Braves kind of have that same type of setup.
Three of them: that Charlton, Dibble, and
Not Stan Belinda. Was it Stan Belinda at one point?
No. They had who's
Randy Myers?
the lefty,
Randy Myers.
Randy Myers.
Yep.
They had those three guys at the back end of their bullpen. I mean, you know, that's why they were just so good that year. So,
yep.
Great moves by the Braves. But again, you know, so crazy, but the off season is still not over yet. You know, there's still guys that could be moved. There's still free agents out there that could be possibly picked up. So, it should be interesting.
And John Gonzalez has reminded us it's Randy Myers.
It was Randy Myers.
The name slipped me, John. Apologies. I wasn't actually watching in 1990, but I just knew it from collecting baseball cards. But Randy Myers, I remember at the tail end of his career, but obviously a very good closer. I mean, listen, they were all great closers at one point in their careers. Norm Charlton and Rob Dibble and Randy Myers. Surely the Braves remind me of that a little bit as well. But the Brew Force mentioned the other team that we should get to here, and that is the Philadelphia Phillies, because the Philadelphia Phillies have made some moves here. I mean, Brew Force, give me your thoughts on that, because that's the other team we know that you love talking about it. And John Gonzalez chimes in and says Myers was a former Met. Yes, we know, and he was traded for John Franco, so that was definitely something else that we know. But Brew Force, I mean, want to talk about your beloved Philadelphia Phillies?
Beloved.
Oh. Well, there's many reasons why I just hate the Philadelphia Phillies, and for all those that haven't gotten to hear me on Sportzwire Radio or the Sports Report, you've heard me talk about Bryce Harper. It's probably just as bad as I've talked about James Dolan. I hate the guy. I despise the guy. He's my most hated baseball player of all time, Bryce Harper. And the Philly fanatic just disgusts me, because everybody talks about, it's just ugly. It's disgusting. And the next person that tells me that the Philly fanatic is better than Mr. Met, I'm going to freak out. But when it gets to the team of the Philadelphia Phillies, all right, they do have Bryce Harper, who had a good season last year, and just developing, a few minutes ago, Nick Castellanos is now a Philadelphia Philly. And that's going to be a big time.
Barber also is with the Phillies. That's a stacked lineup now.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
lineup.
They can definitely hit. But the question is, how is their pitching going to hold up with the hitting? And the pitching, listen, they have a guy like Zach Wheeler who had a good season last year, Aaron Nola. But, after that, that's where the questions become to come in. 3, 4, 5 in that Phillies rotation. Anybody who you're really excited about. Stop it, John Gonzalez. And then, you get to the bullpen. And the bullpen. Listen, they signed J. Reese Familia, and they signed Brad Hand, and
watch Familia have like a career year now. You just watch. He'll have a great year.
Oh, I know. Just because of everything that happened with the Mets, but they have Jose Alvarado still. They got a few other guys in there. Knebel, we mentioned. So they got some guys that have been in that bullpen now. But the question is going to be the starting pitching, and then if the bullpen can be consistent enough. But their lineup, and with the addition of Castellanos amongst others, and they developed a guy like Alec Boehm at third base, and they got other pieces that they've developed. So the Phillies are going to be a tough team to pitch against. But we have great pitching, so I think that we'll be fine there. We just got to hit. And the Phillies, it's going to be a question about their pitching and how they can compete against the Braves and the Mets with their pitching.
No question that their lineup is going to be very good, but their starting pitching will be a question mark. And Justin, give me your thoughts on some of these moves that the Philadelphia Phillies have made, because they're a team also now that's right there in this rearview mirror, and especially now with an added postseason spot or two. The Phillies are definitely a team still in the discussion.
Yeah, their lineup is going to be certainly formidable. You add Kyle Schwarber, you add Nick Castellanos to a lineup that already has Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto. It's certainly a very good lineup. I just want to know, Brad wants to know how well they're going to pitch. I want to know I want to know if their defense is going to make any plays, because their defense is set to be god awful. I just saw on Twitter that if they chose to go with this outfield of Schwarber, Harper, Castellanos, it would be a -18 defensive WAR.
Who's playing center?
Harper. Exactly. Their defense is on pace to be one of the worst defenses ever. Oh. And that's only going to hurt their pitching. And as great of a lineup as they could have, it puts a lot of pressure on the lineup to have to produce, and that could lead to a lot of issues. I still think they're a slightly above 500 team, only because I just don't trust their pitching. And even Aaron Nola has been shaky over the last couple of years. Zach Wheeler's been the one guy who's been of consistency for the Phillies, but after that, who else starting games for them?
Right, who?
Vince Velasquez, you got Zach Elfin and Nola. It's after that you got one very good starter in Wheeler, and the rest of them are question marks. And John Gonzalez has got a funny comment. He says, "As Drupal Cabrera."
They got to sign a center fielder, right? They just have to. They can't go with those.
That's been their one thing. They haven't been able to find it. They've tried Hazley out there, Odubel Herrera, amongst others.
They brought Herrera back.
Right. That center field position has been that one position for the Phillies that they really haven't figured out. And to Justin's point, it's a great point. Their defense is going to be god awful. Yeah. Let's see if it hurts them this season. It definitely did last year.
Chris, give me your thoughts on the Phillies and some of their moves here. Because, again, I do think the Phillies also have some pressure on them, especially with the money that they've spent in the past. And what do you make of some of these moves the Phillies have made here in the offseason?
Yeah, I like the moves, but again, like what we're talking about, defense, and we're not even talking about the infield defense. You got Didi still playing short, who's not very good defensively. He's not what he was about 4 years ago when he was with the Yankees. So, I'd be worried about their defense, and we just said it. They're starting pitching. Who's going to start? After Wheeler, it's question mark. You could say Nola, but like you said, he's had some rough outings too. So, and after that, I don't know who they got. I thought they signed somebody this year, didn't they? Nobody that big, but I thought they signed
one name I'm looking at here that I'm sure will be in the rotation because they got him last year is Kyle Gibson. But
I saw that.
I can't really trust him.
Right. He's
last year Nola was 9-9 with a 4.63 ERA. So that doesn't.
And he's their number 2.
Yeah, that doesn't inspire much confidence right now.
Yeah, if they got another pitcher, I'd be a little more confident in them. They're just going to be a pain in the neck team for the Mets and the Braves, I think, because they can hit.
Well, they can hit.
You got little stadium, so
they can hit. You got Gene Segura, you got Realmuto.
Yeah.
You got Reese Hoskins. You got, Harper, 35 and 84 last year, which is kind of a down year for Harper, but the second half was just, massive. That's why he was in the MVP discussion. Lineup can definitely hit. What's that?
Didn't he win the MVP?
Yep.
Yeah, offensively, they're going to score runs. It's just a matter of how much they're going to give up, too,
I don't know. Look, I'm going to throw it out there when it comes to the Philadelphia Phillies, and I was kind of hearing this a few days ago, and want to get some of you guys' thoughts on this. And is Joe Girardi on the hot seat with the Phillies? Give me your thoughts on this.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. He is gone if they miss the playoffs. He's gone. You know what? They've had a talented roster, and their owner, John Middleton, has been very willing to spend and make sure that this team is as good as possible. They're going to be one of the teams over the luxury tax threshold now.
Yep.
Based on this Castellanos signing. And they are a team that has to make the playoffs. For whatever reason, they've not been able to do any better than 500. And with their pitching, I have no reason to believe they're that much better than a 500 team.
Well, 500 in this day and age, 85 wins.
The playoffs. It might get you
in. It might.
What do you think, Chris? Is Girardi on the hot seat? What do you think?
Absolutely. I agree with Justin 100% on this. He's got to make the playoffs. I don't know how he's going to make the playoffs with that pitching staff, but he's got to make the playoffs. I think they should have, instead of invested in Castellanos, they should have invested in a pitcher somehow. I know there's not much out there left, but try to look for a pitcher. I would go to Oakland and try to make a trade in that, for one of their guys.
Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea are still out there.
Yeah.
You almost even, not to say it's to get him because he's obviously not out there, but almost even get a Michael Wacha type, just somebody that's a reclamation project, just not that type of player.
Right. They need something.
They're going to hit though. Listen, if you're a Phillies fan, you're going to certainly
dangerous lineup.
That's what they might be counting on. Listen, they're going to be one of those teams, almost like a Red Sox or a Rockies teams of the past, where they're going to just score a ton of runs, and that might get them in. Brad, I know you're no fan of Joe Girardi. We've talked about him quite a bit in the past, but is he? I kind of feel like that after his couple years with the Phillies and so far, and their team's kind of lack of success, to say the least, he's on the hot seat. What do you think?
I'm going to be a little bit nicer, actually. I'm going to say his seat's going to be warm, but not hot, not that hot yet. And listen, if the Philadelphia Phillies add pitching by the trading deadline and they still don't make the playoffs, then I'll change my position. But if they stay with this starting rotation the entire year, it's a legitimate reason for why they're not making the playoffs, and I can't blame that on Joe Girardi. And also look at his bullpen. The last couple of years, his bullpen has blown so many games. Oh
my God, that bullpen made the Mets bullpen look good.
As much as I can, fault him and rip him apart, it's not really all his fault. So, I could see him getting fired at the end of the year, but they need to add pitching to give him, any sort of chance at winning. And I hate to say it for his sake, and I hate to say it for Philadelphia Philly fans, but the former manager you had might be in your way, because Gabe Kapler might be that wild card team that gets in before you do.
Yeah.
That's it. That's a good point. That's a good point. And that actually kind of preludes me into my next thing I did want to talk about. Major League Baseball here before we get an NFL sad story here and some closing thoughts here, since we are in overtime on Sportswire Radio, is obviously, because we haven't talked about it yet, Freddie Freeman is a Los Angeles Dodger. We got to at least mention that. Justin, give me your thoughts on Freddie Freeman, now a member of Tinseltown and those World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. The 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers.
They just continue to not worry about any kind of financial burden. They just go out there and get what they need. And look, this really eases up the loss of Corey Seager to the Texas Rangers in the offseason. One of the things that the Dodgers were missing really was a second baseman. They really haven't been able to commit to Gavin Lux full time. And you're getting Trey Turner going from second to short now that Seager has departed. And And now Max Muncy, instead of playing first base, Max Muncy is going to be their starting second baseman. So you're looking at a lineup that has, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Justin Turner, Trey Turner, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, AJ Pollock. I mean, from 1 to 9, there is no out. There is no easy outs. Like, they are a lineup that is just so incredibly stacked. John's 100% right. They have an all-star team. And look, I watched a lot. I watched the Freddie Freeman press conference today. It's clear. It was the Dodgers he was going to. Once he found out about the Matt Olson trade, once he knew that Atlanta was no longer going to be pursuing him, and he even said today he only received 2 calls from Atlanta all offseason.
I would not have guessed
one
that.
right before the lockout, just checking in. One right after the lockout, just to check in. Wow. And the Dodgers became aggressive in their pursuit. And, we've heard the rumors about the Red Sox and Rays throwing.
Yeah, the Rays kind of came in there like almost a dark horse.
Yeah, we heard that the rumors about that, but the fact of the matter is they were never in contention. It was just never going to happen. And the same could be said. I know we could say it on our side from a financial standpoint that Hal Steinbrenner was just not going to put that kind of money out there for Freddie Freeman, especially knowing.
I know that the Pinstripe Chronicles guys were talking about this. I mean,
especially knowing what's likely upcoming for Aaron Judge with money for him on the horizon. But let's be honest, I don't think the Yankees were ever a serious threat to begin with. Just from the standpoint.
Neither did I.
Freddie Freeman's not coming to New York.
Right.
So, he said, if I'm not going back to Atlanta, I'm going to play in front of my home fans. And, he talked about the excitement of getting to have his father and grandfather, an 85-year-old grandfather, be at the ballpark every day. I mean, that was a huge factor. And, he was already in California, because he lives in Corona Del Mar in Orange County. And he said this was it. I was just a Dodger. So, I mean, from the looks of it, he was made to be a Dodger at some point. I'm just surprised Atlanta didn't go to more lengths to kind of.
Yeah, neither did me either.
Because this was their World Series hero. This was their guy for the last dozen years. He said he was in the organization for 15 years. I mean, this was their guy, and they let him go like that.
And the Braves usually
weird.
The Braves usually try to keep the guys if they can afford them. They've always been good with that. I mean, they try.
Yeah, and even Chipper Jones commented the other day, saying, "I hope he goes to the Dodgers and it comes back to bite you guys."
Well,
because he thought they were making a mistake, and I think that one thing we cannot quantify is the leadership role that Freddie Freeman had on that Atlanta Braves team, and the leadership role that he's going to bring to the Los Angeles Dodgers.
I'm gonna let Chris answer this next one because this is tailor made for Chris. I mean,
I can't take these.
To quickly answer it, I would say if George was around, yes on Correa. I'd still say no on Freeman. I think Freeman
why not? Why would you not think that he wouldn't go for Freddie Freeman? He is the kind of player.
No, I think he would go for him, but I think Freddie Freeman was dead set in going home to California.
Okay, that makes sense. For you, Chris,
I don't know. I'm not a big what if. If George was here, this would. I don't know. I'm not really into that.
Well, on the fan, a couple of nights ago, there was actually a couple of people who were saying that. There was,
of course. The Yankee fans are ridiculous when they say that. I don't know. You got to remember too. George really didn't have to deal with the salary cap like we have now. No, salary tax, excuse me, or whatever you want to call it. So it's a little different now. It's a little different situation. I think looking at Freddie Freeman for a second.
Sure.
And just what Justin said. I don't think New York and I don't want to say just the Yankees, but let's just say New York by itself. I don't know if New York is that place that people want to play in anymore. You know what I mean? it used to be the place where you make the most money, right? You get the biggest contract, you get the endorsements and everything. You get endorsements and everything no matter where you play now. So I don't think New York is the place anymore like it used to be, 20, 30 years ago. So to say, oh, I want to play for the Pinstripes, I don't know if that's that big of a deal.
Even with the Yankee history, the legacy, all the World Series and the postseason.
I think for certain guys, yes.
Yeah.
Like for
not
example,
as much.
Like for example, Anthony Rizzo, while he may have been born in Florida, he grew up there, he has a lot, he has a lot of family members who's actually from my town in Lyndhurst.
Okay.
So and I went to school with a relative of his, and so he would spend summers in Lyndhurst, New Jersey. Diehard Yankee fan, dreamed of putting on the Pinstripes. So for certain guys, yeah, there are guys who've dreamed their whole. Look at what Garrett Cole did in the press conference. He brought the poster he had when he was a kid.
Right.
There are certain guys who just dreamed of being a Yankee, but for some guys, it's just not all that anymore.
I don't think it's as much as it used to be.
Correct.
Like the kid that they just traded for, Khalifa. He was a big Yankee fan as a kid too. He posted a picture of himself as a kid in the bleachers. So I think that's great, but that's where I think it's starting to change, where it's not automatically like, I don't think there's a lot of Anthony Rizzos out there as much. Now you start seeing, as they're growing up, now they start seeing these other kids. Like maybe these young kids now growing up are going to see Ohtani.
Here's the thing. Now these kids growing up don't know what a Yankee dynasty looks like.
Right. That too.
They weren't born. And the Yankees have won. And think about it. The Yankees have won one World Series in the past 22 years. So anybody who's grown up in this day and age, they're seeing the Boston.
So you're saying it's like the Cowboys in football, where yes, they
got not that bad. It's not that bad.
No, it's not as bad because the Yankees did win.
The
Yankees did win, and the Yankees are still in the playoffs every year. The Yankees have not had a losing season since 1992, I believe.
92.
Yeah.
So I think it also speaks to how hard it is to win.
Right. They're still legit, but they're not.
It's just that difficult.
Right.
I mean, is there something to that now maybe players don't want to play in New York anymore? Do you buy into any of that?
Oh, well, I definitely do when it comes to the NBA. And we all know why that is. And again, I'll save that for the very end. All right. But, that definitely applies to the New York Knicks. I don't know if it applies as much to the Yankees. I think there's still players that want to play in New York. But, to Chris's point, you could get endorsed and you could get money at other places too now. And, some players just listen, all it takes is maybe one player on a team to persuade them to play somewhere else or just the roster. It doesn't really take all right, New York City, I want to play New York. Like if there's another team constructed well elsewhere, players will go there. So I think that there is validity to that for sure. When it comes to New York, maybe not as, not as, all right, John, we'll just be a little more patient, John. I'll get to it. All right? We're talking baseball right now. And in the end, I do think that it's truthful that some players don't want to play in New York as much just because there's other opportunity to get the same thing other places.
No, I definitely – yeah, Chris, jump in for me.
You got to remember, too, like with New York and, well, I know Freeman went to California, but there's also the whole tax situation, too, right?
Yes.
That's why Seager and Simeon went down to Texas and got that deal. If New York wanted to match that, right, they had to go another, I think it was like $40 or $50 million to match that because of the taxes. So I think that has something to do with it too. When it comes to
great
point. Deals,
I always thought I was always and the taxes are a fair point, but I always thought the weather also played a factor because, remember, don't forget April and even into part of May, you can get like unpleasant conditions to play. And you look at Texas, you look at Florida as examples, leave aside the economic climates. I mean, it's pretty much 70 all year as a low and it's 90 plus degrees. And
for the most part, and then in the new Rangers ballpark to, eliminate. I think the reason why Texas was not so much a destination before was because the building was outdoors and it's so incredibly.
I know, in August in Texas, it's like
there's a reason why they're playing
180 there.
There's a reason why even on Sundays where everybody's playing day games, they're playing 7:00 games because It's
Oh,
110
it was
degrees during the
oppressively
day.
hot.
It's
It was
disgusting. It's humid. Now that new ballpark is indoors. It's got a retractable roof, so it does make for a better climate weather-wise to deal with. And so definitely that is certainly a factor when looking at a Texas team.
And I just want to give a couple of updates here before I get to an NFL story. TCU, boy, Seton Hall, I guess, forgot to show up.
Embarrassing.
69-42. Boy, I'm disappointed in that one. And we
Absolutely
got a barn burner in Colgate in Wisconsin. And Brad, that could be upset alert time because it's 49-46 though. Colgate, 11-16 left in the second half here. So those are some other updates here.
Wait, Brad, were you on Colgate?
No, I was not on Colgate.
Okay, me either. I never trust a team that's named after a toothpaste.
I always like Colgate toothpaste, but that's
I don't. No, trust me, I do too. I have it upstairs.
Oh, so do I. So do I. But John Gonzalez has a comment here. I'll address the Red Sox have been very quiet. Anybody want to answer that on the Red Sox? I mean, that is a fair point. Anybody?
They have been, but they're firm. It seems like they're firmly in the mix on Trevor Story.
Okay, all right. So that's a fair point.
That's the lone rumor I've heard. I mean, also that they're now dealing with the I believe it is a rib fracture with Chris Sale. He's going to miss some time.
Boy, Red Sox fans and Chris Sale, when injury, he's
also not going to be allowed to travel with the team to Toronto.
Oh, he's
unvaccinated.
And a few other updates.
That's not horrible, right? When you think about it, if they have a 3-game series, all right, they skip his start.
And I don't know where their series lines up, but it looks like he may be on the IL for the first series anyway.
All right, so that works.
All right, and I gotta get two other college basketball scores in. I got Houston 82-68 over UAB, and boy, Michigan State 74-73 over Davidson. Certainly a hard.
We had a bad beat. We had a bad beat, by the way. We had a very bad beat. Michigan State was -1.5. It was 74-70. Davidson hit 3.
Oh yeah, that's so betting like. And then we have Colgate now 49-48 over Wisconsin with 11.
It's an immediate timeout currently
in the second half. And Chris, I wanted to get to the news here before we get to closing thoughts and such about obviously the passing of the late NFL insider that you posted in our Sportswire radio group on Twitter of John Clayton. Of course, John Clayton was famously with the ESPN NFL Sunday Countdown guys and a number of shows you'd see him. I think he was with ESPN for as long as I can remember, and only the age of 67 I saw. I would have thought he was like 90. I got to be honest, because John Clayton always looked old. I'm not trying to.
No, I know what you mean.
My condolences to John Clayton.
I would have thought a little bit older too.
I always thought John Clayton was old looking. But Chris, certainly thought it too on the passing of John Clayton here.
Yeah, no, he was always like the insider. You know how Adam Schefter is now.
Our own John Gonzalez of Sportswire Radio. Our own Adam Schefter, John Gonzalez.
Right, he's like John Gonzalez, only he was the early version of John Gonzalez. He had, he was the insider. He was one of the first ones, I think. I don't know if there was anybody really before him doing the insider stuff. Mortensen,
I'm trying to think.
Still around.
Mortensen, I would say.
I think it was him and Mortensen at the beginning.
Yep. Mortensen, I think, goes back to the very early days of ESPN. I'm almost pretty certain.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. Was he an original ESPN?
I think he might have been.
But close to it.
Yeah, it was pretty close. But like you said, he was on all the shows, But
Peter King, maybe another one of those old school insiders, right? Peter King, right? He goes back to a while.
Yeah. But was he on ESPN?
No, but
he might.
Sports Illustrated was
right. He was a Sports Illustrated guy, but it's sad whenever you, especially a guy that you kind of grew up with the last 20, 30 years with, right? Watching all the time on ESPN. So I always loved the commercial he did. If you remember, I'm sure it's going to pop up everywhere on Twitter.
I know I've already seen it.
The one where he's talking and then he rips his suit off and
I remember that. Commercial. Yeah,
that was probably one of my favorite commercials. But
I do remember that. Yep.
I don't have it on, but I hope ESPN.
Well, the light went on and off, and they started flickering, and he was with the fire. That was the fire drill commercial, right, where the lights were flickering on.
No. He's doing a report.
Yeah,
like he's doing his like a standard report, and he rips off he's blasting the music. He's got a Slayer shirt on.
Yeah, I remember that. There was another one.
Yells
I
at
think.
his mom.
Well, wasn't there another one that there was a fire drill, and I know that like he kind of like put his like tie, his tie was tied to the back of his head. I mean, somebody
Oh,
can
yeah.
fact
I think
check
I
me on
remember
that.
that one.
Yeah.
But that was the one that stood out most. But obviously, again, 67. I mean, boy, a young man.
Not
I
old.
mean, obviously, like I said, and I'm not trying to be facetious. I really thought he was like 80. I just, for whatever reason, John Clayton always looked old to me. But certainly, I want to give my condolences to him, and also for the wrestling fans here. I do want to one more time, because we did a tribute earlier here, obviously mentioned the passing of the late great Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon, at the age of 63, and unfortunately he died from complications of a hip surgery / replacement. 3 heart attacks afterwards, unfortunately. Had very, 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 very tough life. He had a number of different setbacks and issues and a whole bunch of things. It was an ESPN 30 for 30 documentary done by him where he actually he killed a man in self-defense. He was a bouncer back in a club in 1983. There's a whole litany of stuff, but I know we're not a wrestling show here, but I did want to at least acknowledge the passing of the late, great Scott Hall, only at the age of 63. But John Clayton definitely took me back here, and obviously I do want to get some closing thoughts from some of the guys here in the brute force. I think John Gonzalez was kind of teasing it, so before I get out of here, I do kind of want to bring it up because I think he wants to hear it, and I'm sure people on Instagram will want to hear it. I mean, thought or two on the NBA, and of course your much beloved New York Knicks, who at least, I guess because of the NCAA, have kind of knocked the NBA off the sports map here for a little while.
Yeah, thank God. Because I don't want to. I already said, anything to not watch the New York Knicks. I will find a way. I'm getting ready for the WNBA season. I'm watching the Long Island Nets season. Those things are more exciting than the New York Knicks. So certainly that. But to get to John Gonzalez, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't already follow his groups, follow the Sports Authority.
Yes,
group.
please follow his group. It's a phenomenal group.
It's pretty awesome. But, for those that don't, just take a look at this. All right, take a look at this. John Gonzalez, basically, for you guys who can't see it, it says, James Dolan signed this guy, Brad Weiss, to a contract. All right, and he wants to know if I validate this comment. All right, and let me just say this, John Gonzalez. Let me say this because I know, John Gonzalez, that I have been so harsh and so bad on James Dolan because he's the worst owner in sports history, in my opinion. But if James Dolan approached me about a contract, damn right I'm taking it. All right, I'm taking it. All right, the New York Knicks need me. They need something. They need some energy. All right, so in the end, if he did offer me a contract, I definitely would take it. He's not offering me no damn contract. Why would he offer somebody a contract who goes on the sports report and blasts them all the time? So, in the end, listen, just look at the picture of him that you put, John Gonzalez. That just says it all. He looks like a clown. He is a clown. He's the worst owner in sports history. The Knicks are awful. And in the end, Kemba Walker for MVP? Yeah, right. Maybe when he was in the NCAA tournament years ago. Maybe he was MVP then.
What's the opposite of MVP? Remember, I think, was it Sports Illustrated that used to give out the awards? They would run it down and it would have a list of, like, it would be your opposite of the MVP. Maybe Kemba Walker would get that award.
Please. And I ain't no Knicks get no damn awards. They should get awards for most embarrassing season and embarrassment to New York City. And like we all said, the New York Knicks are one of the biggest reasons why New York has kind of fallen off, especially in basketball when it comes to people wanting to play here. It's the New York Knicks. So
I think there's something we talked about here.
To make it clear, it's not only in the NBA, it's trickled down to other levels where New York is not the mecca of basketball like it used to be because of the New York Knicks. I said it, and it's true, and everyone knows it. As much as I'm a New York Knicks fan, it's true. So that's the bottom line.
There is something to that because I even remember, even though the Knicks didn't win in the 90s, I remember like free agents were always considered. I remember the year that the Knicks had signed Allen Houston. They signed guys like Buck Williams, and they signed all these different players. Like people wanted to come and play for the Knicks, and even guys that came in here via trades. It was like people wanted to play for the Knicks, and like for the last 20 years, like nobody really wants to play to that level. Nobody's coming here and taking mid-level exemptions, or they're coming in and taking less money. It's really, we're not getting any of that. So I definitely agree. I mean, Justin, you want to add anything before we get closing thoughts on the NBA and whatever else on your mind here?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick pop to Kyrie Irving for that 60-point performance the other night.
And a 41 in the first half.
Yeah, I mean he was utterly unbelievable. It was the game against the Orlando Magic on Tuesday. I mean, look, from the Nets' perspective, they're playing better basketball. They've won 5 of their last 6 now. I think they're finally starting to right the ship, and obviously they get a comeback win tonight. They had maybe one of the worst first halves I've ever seen against the Portland Trailblazers, but they do find a way to win. Kevin Durant, of course, was terrific again tonight, but I mean, look. Again, if the mandates aren't going to change, we're not going to see Kyrie at home. So, and he's not going to be able to go to Toronto, and that looms large because he wouldn't be able to play in the play-in game. So, I don't know what's going to happen there. But I mean, overall, my one final thought on the team, I'm just happy. I'm happy they're playing better. I'm crushed that Spencer Dinwiddie, of all people, had to have the buzzer beating shot on a Thursday
Brendan
night.
Fitzpatrick's boy now. The Bruce was.
Oh yeah, he was hyped after that one.
I always liked Spencer Dinwiddie. I always liked him.
He was huge. He was huge for us as a part of the rebuild.
Yep.
A part of Kenny Atkinson's teams that kind of started.
I was saying a
Sportzwire group. Bring the franchise back from how bad Billy King really made it.
Don't even mention that name anymore.
Look, I'm happy the team's playing better. They've looked better. We got Seth Curry back tonight. He missed a couple of games with an ankle issue. But, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond have certainly been a big help to this team for sure.
Absolutely, no question about that. And obviously the Nets are playing very, very well. Sans the Dallas Mavericks game. And before we get out of here and get closing thoughts, I did want to acknowledge the commercial that Chris sent over. Yeah, that was I do remember that one. For whatever reason, I remember the fire drill one more, but that was a funny one. He had the Slayer shirt on and put his hair back, and he was just with the Chinese food. Yeah, that was a funny one. Yeah, I do remember that one. That was a funny commercial. Yeah, something tells me that probably is John Clayton, because I don't think I really knew much about John Clayton until that moment. And John Gonzalez says Milwaukee is the team. Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I mean, listen, Milwaukee could certainly
sleep on Miami.
Not at all. They're very good.
And Chicago, got to throw Chicago in there.
Yeah.
Throw the Cleveland Cavaliers in there too. Don't sleep.
Yeah,
Cleveland's very good.
Well, the moral of the story is the Eastern Conference is wide open. That's the moral of the story there. The East is open. So, but and then
the moral of the story, if you're on the Nets side, the Nets can't get out of that 7. If the Nets can't get out of that 8 seed, you really need Toronto to get the 6th spot.
Well, the real moral of the story is
because that means Cleveland falls to 7, and Kyrie can play in Cleveland.
Well, the real moral of the story here is, before we get out of here, is that the Brooklyn Nets are probably hoping every single day that Mayor Eric Adams decides to wake up and say, hey, you know what? Maybe I should change this hokey vaccine law and just let all these people who lost their jobs and people who aren't wanting to get the vaccine.
And Justin, how about where's Ben Simmons? How much longer we got to wait? That's all I got.
Never. He's not even a thought anymore. I'm not even waiting.
So is Ben? So you're saying? So and I can't believe I'm saying this. So you're saying Ben Simmons is almost like Jed Lowry?
No, he'll play. No, he'll play and have an impact, but I don't know. I don't think it'll be this year.
I mean, Jed Lowry.
You know what? Let me ask Bruce. I got to ask Brad a question here.
Sure. Talk to me.
Looking at every year, right? We watch the tournament, and we know the big name players, right? They're going to go to the draft, blah. They're going to go to the NBA. What I always think about is most of the other kids. This is it for them, right? They're done. This is probably going to be their last game they're ever going to play, right? Mm-hmm. You did this, right? How, what is going on in their heads playing their last game? They're like, well, I'm never going to play basketball, but I'm never going to play on a team. I'm never going to do this again. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's a feeling that it definitely takes a couple days, even weeks, even months to just get past. I mean, listen, it's one of those things where when you show up to practice every day and you're committed to a team, and you put in all that work, whether it's the work in practice, the work off the court, the bonding that you do as teammates, and it comes to an end, it's tough. It's one of those things that it takes time because you've done all this work and you felt. And listen, all these teams that made the tournament, all of them should have been thinking we have a chance to win the entire thing. That's the motivation. When you get there, and that's when your season starts. Your goal is to get there, and then your goal when you get there is to win it all. So it definitely hurts. I can remember. Listen, at St. Joe's, it was a little different because we never really had a playoff run besides the first year. And I remember that, feeling when we lost that game, that locker room. It was a tough loss. You watch, you think, you're like, what if, all these different times. But the big one I'll remember is losing to Uniondale in high school my senior year, the last game I played at Plainview JFK. That, I'll tell you one thing, Chris, that game we lost against Uniondale, 7 years later, I can't watch it. It gets me too emotional. It's hard for me to go back and watch that game just because of how much that season, how much that team meant to me. So that's really how it is as a player. And as a coach, now that I just came off losing the championship game, with the varsity team that we got to the county championship, you just keep thinking, how can I have done better? How can I have done this? And you have to move on, but it's hard. It takes time. And it's a mental thing. You have to get over it mentally.
Yeah, and I can tell you just from covering some of these teams, you like, for example, Brad, the John Jay team in 2020, watching them lose for those seniors, the way they did in the CUNYAC semifinals game. I know it pales into comparison to what you see in the NCAA tournament and such, but it was guys that you didn't even want to talk to them. It was like, normally, you talk to the guys after the game. Chris, you'd speak to them, whether you text message them or talk to them on Instagram. It was like being there after they lost the way they did. They were a 20-win team, a 1 seed. They were expected to be in the NCAA tournament. It was like, don't even talk to them. Don't even talk. So it's like, it's just one of them things. It's some people are just, and understandably so. Listen, especially at the college level, it's just, you see a lot of tears. You see a lot of stuff in the locker room that probably can't be spoken for. And I think that's a great question. Even with the five-town soccer team that lost in the championship game, in the national championship, it was just, I know guys you can't even some guys replay it and other guys are they try to, what's the word I'm trying to think of here? Brad will know it. Almost kind of put it in the back of your brain and just try to block it out. That's the expression that they use. But Anybody want to share closing thoughts before we get out of here? Anything else anybody want to get off their chest before we say goodnight here until next week?
I think I'm pretty good.
I mean, I'll listen, just because we love him, I'll give another shout out to John Gonzalez, and make sure you follow that Sports Authorities group on Facebook. Yes, he does a tremendous job, and listen, you name it, the Adam Schefter of the Sports Report, any insider, that's John Gonzalez for us, and he gives us some great comments, whether they're, going at me or not. They're always good and always informative. So shout out to John Gonzalez, as always. And once again, there's so much news today and so much sports news. It's a great time to be a sports fan. Tune into the NCAA tournament. It's going to be some great games. Baseball, spring training games we got starting going on.
That's awesome. This is the best time of the year. Listen, you got so much going on. Listen, NHL, I mean, how about our Islanders, Chris? I mean, beating the Rangers and Sorokin's playing well. Listen, I mean, Islanders are over 500, are giving us something to watch at least. You got baseball now, spring training. You got NBA heating up, postseason college basketball right now. All games here coming up this weekend to hang out there and watch. If you have a chance to take a day off, definitely do it. I mean, you got obviously NFL news. We got USFL news, and we have something else.
That's starting up too in a couple of weeks.
Well, and we've got another football league that we might actually be working with here on the station, but I won't tip my hand just yet. I have a feeling that'll be an announcement on next week's show, that something that we picked up kind of fell into our lap. It looks like it's going to be something that will, I think, benefit us, but I don't want to tip my hand just yet.
I'll say one last thing, Tom, and I'll prelude it into next week because it's probably going to be one of the hot topics next week. Obviously, we just learned of Deshaun Watson now being on the Cleveland Browns. I think one of the biggest topics is going to be where's Baker Mayfield next week. I think that'll be one of the bigger stories we talk about because I think it's in the coming days we're going to be finding out.
Well, I'll tell you what the NFL has done more so, I feel like, than last year, Brad, when we were on the air, is that there's so much news. I almost feel like, and Chris will probably appreciate this, the NFL has almost become like the hot stove was for baseball. It's almost like the NFL is
much bigger.
Yeah.
And think about it, too. Like I was saying it earlier, like we just went through the craziest NFL season. Then the postseason was even more nutsier.
Yeah.
And now look at this offseason. It's
I feel like I'm talking NFL now. I'd be honest with you. I feel like I'm talking NFL now more than I did during the season. I think
we've never seen an offseason like this, ever.
I got to be honest. When the Super Bowl used to end, you didn't even talk NFL until camp. Now it's like
another name. 365 now.
Yep.
Here's another name.
Right, jump in.
What happens to Matt Ryan in Atlanta?
Yep.
After they wanted Watson, they thought they were getting him. They also had free agents lined up, ready to sign once Watson got there. And then it's like, oh, he's going to Cleveland. What are you going to tell Matt Ryan now?
Film more Tide commercials?
Yeah. We were just kidding. We were just talking. It wasn't that serious. Like, how are you going to, this guy's your franchise quarterback and you're going to, I don't know. You may want out now. I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'll be interesting.
Listen, that's something we could definitely talk about. Who would take him? Who would take on what he brings in, what he doesn't really bring?
Indy, I'd rather talk to Matt Ryan than Baker Mayfield at this point.
Well, I think Baker Mayfield, I'm sure we'll speak about it next week. I think, was it Ron Laird that mentioned that he thought about him with Carolina, and John Gonzalez, of course, chimes in about Jimmy G. I mean, Jimmy G is always going to come up here. I mean, Jimmy G, it's the peripheral.
That's the other guy.
He might, honestly, I think he might get lost in the shuffle and he just stays with San Francisco. I don't know.
It's possible. You're right.
Too many other quarterbacks are moving.
Listen, these are all answers here that we're going to certainly speak about next week on the show, and we'll have a lot to talk about. Again, very, very good time here at the Year of Sports. We have so much going on, and I want to thank so many people that have joined us here for overtime in our show earlier. Again, you can catch us tomorrow afternoon on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I want to thank again Desmond Johnson. You can also catch us on Roku, 8 p.m., the Sportswire radio show. I want to thank Linda and Mac McGrath for that. Also, Talking Rivals. They play throughout the week on Roku also. I think actually some of the shows that we play for audio also might be on there. So there might be a few other shows that if you have Roku, they probably play it. There's so many shows that they have. So I want to make sure everybody also goes to nessp.info. Sports Authorities group with John Gonzalez. Also go to his group if you're on Facebook, and Sportswire Radio as well on Facebook. So I want to thank everybody for watching, listening to this. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you'll get the Sit Down Marks 1-year anniversary show. You'll also get Ammo and Danny Premier League talk. You'll get some new shows from Pinstripe Chronicles, Liftoff Jets, Baseball Banter. We'll play again here. We got a few other shows in the pike, a work in progress all throughout the day. So I want to thank everybody for watching, listening to us. You are on Sportswire Radio with Chris Bizzea of the Liftoff Jets and the Talking Rivals Show, Justin Gianelli of the Baseball Banter Show, the Brute Force Brad Weiss, the legendary SJC Long Island Golden Eagle head coach for our Plainview JFK Hawks boys JV team, also of the Level Up Basketball Organization and the Long Island Nets and the LI Brew Crew. Cannot forget about the LI Brew Crew, of course, the boys and the softball team. I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager here of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. Good night.